Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And for the 300th time, thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to a very special MotorWeek podcast, number 300 it is. And around our table in Studio C at MotorWeek World headquarters for this momentous day, we have Greg Carlos, Jessica Ray, and Kyle Scanlon. And we're going to take a look back at the last 15 years of MotorWeek podcast as we celebrate that 300 mark. But we're not just going to be reminiscing. We'll also talk about BMW's flashy new electric flagship, the i7, and the first all-electric from Lexus, the RZ. We're eventually going to also look into our crystal headlight and make some predictions about the future and see if we can do any better this next time than we did in the last couple. Anyway, before we get to our look back, let's look at that BMW i7. And Greg Carlos, why don't you take the lead and tell us what it is and what we thought of it?
Yeah, more like a crystal shifter or iDrive selector that BMW likes to do, which, I mean, I hate to lead off on a negative, but I will say that driving with those crystals in the car.
And this is trim on the interior now.
So the iDrive, if you're unfamiliar with BMW, when to use the menu system, that lower controller, basically a big knob to get through the large infotainment screen. Well, now they use like a crystal, which looks awesome. Until it's wintertime and the sun is coming in at a certain angle and you happen to be at a drag strip and it's hitting you in the face all day long, the glare.
Yes. You've been speaking to my wife, I think.
Yeah. But the i7, which is the all-electric, the all-electric version of BMW's flagship 7 Series is very much still a flagship.
I thought so too.
Yeah, I mean, this would compete against, Mercedes-Benz EQS, which is their version, the electric version of their S-Class. So you get the idea here. Anything with an I in front of it with BMW means electric. And what we have here is an all-electric 7 Series, and it is as luxurious as BMW luxury gets, and specifically speaking from the rear seats. I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the whole rear.
They were like a limousine.
Yeah.
They really were.
They were an upgrade. The executive seats are like $7,000 or $8,000 or something like that. They fold every which way, or not fold, they tilt.
Almost
move.
like a lay flat in the right passenger,
rear
passenger.
And there's a theater screen, and I don't mean just a television screen.
No, it's a theater screen.
A literal theater screen that drops down from the roof and is basically as wide as the car.
Yep.
And it's an 8K screen where when you go into theater mode, there's an actual theater mode. We'll put up the rear shades so that limits light coming in.
And so people behind you won't get distracted.
Yeah. It's like being
That's true.
at an IMAX movie theater because you have like the sound that comes in.
Yeah.
It goes like a building.
Yeah. Was that THX that did that back in the day?
Yeah, it's very similar to that.
But I also did drive the car. I didn't just sit in the back seat. And I like the i4, which is, again, the all-electric version of the 4 Series. Like, this to me was a 7 Series.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't notice anything different about it other than the fact that it doesn't have an engine.
I thought it felt heavier, but not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, you've got all that battery anchoring you down, and I was expecting it to not be as responsive, but it was.
Yeah, I think, in this case, I would say heavier feel is maybe a better thing for such a flagship. But on the track, it was actually super nimble. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still rolls a lot. But, I mean, it handles better than a large luxury SUV, or it's not an SUV, it's about as big as an SUV. A large luxury sedan should. We had winter tires, so it's hard to say exactly how it would handle with maybe some better rubber on there, more suited for performance duties. The first thing I noticed was in the handling test was its rear wheel steering capability is just insane these days. I mean, that back end is moving around so much. But then with the acceleration, which electric vehicles, that's the exciting part. This was I would say short of exciting, but still exhilarating, if that's the differentiation I can make, because it was quick off the line, but it wasn't like...
it didn't throw you back in your seat.
Yeah, you know, it was like...
Wasn't like a rocket
Didn't have
sled.
that jolt that the EVs usually have.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like, I mean, to use an overused word, ludicrous like Tesla uses. It certainly wasn't in that category, but it's still quick and just polished. It's
So
just
0 to 60.
0 to 60 was low fours.
Fast for a vehicle that big.
I cannot believe that we're talking about something in the low 4s, 0 to 60 as being not necessarily exhilarating
at this point.
Yeah. Anybody else have some comments? I thought it was a totally enjoyable big car to drive. And felt different than the EQS.
And the door. Somebody talk about the doors.
The
yes.
doors.
So,
Yes, the doors. They're all power doors. So
that kind of drove me a little crazy.
Which you can operate with voice commands.
yes, you can operate with voice commands, and I think it also you can do it like wherever you were sitting in the car, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. But yeah, no, you basically can press a button on the infotainment that'll just open any door. And it's, I mean,
you notice how if you're parked next to someone, they'll open, but just so far. They actually won't hit
there
hit
is
the other
an
vehicle.
insane amount of sensors that you can
they're
see at the
rocker
bottom
sensors.
on the sides.
So like if you do push the button and you're standing there, it'll pop open, but it'll wait till you get out of the way for it to fully open.
We've
heavy.
seen these self-opening and closing doors on other things, notably I think Rolls-Royce and maybe even Bentley.
Genesis.
But in
Genesis
Genesis
right.
was the last one. This just worked better.
Yeah.
Agreed. I agree 100%.
It definitely took.
I know there's another manufacturer that did it, but as the driver, one of the things I liked is when you get in the car, when you step on the brake, it closes the door automatically. I don't know if you picked up on
That
this.
did too, I think.
Yeah.
No, yeah, the BMW did.
does,
I'm saying
yeah.
I forget which other one that we've been in that had that feature in it, but it took me a few times in the previous vehicle that I can't remember which one it was, where I kept getting in the car and the door kept closing without me hitting the button. I'm kind of looking around going, what the heck's going on? How does it even know I'm here? And then once I put it together, put your foot on the brake, it closes the door. I was like, okay, but it makes a lot of sense, and I like it as a feature. I think it just adds like a little extra special than having to press a button.
We didn't talk about one thing that we need to cover, and that's range, practicality. Is this a long-distance vehicle, or is this another one basically for weekly commutes?
No, this one had a
300
around 300.
308 is the official rating. And
I thought it dropped very slowly.
yeah, I noticed that in the iX we had too. I felt like the battery technology was actually really good and gave you very quick and like up to date.
Yes, it was
information
it would
on
like
what the
constantly
state is.
change.
Yeah, and it always ended up. So it gives you a range of like, here's the least amount of miles you can go, and here's the most amount, and it ended up always being closer to the most, like the ambitious total.
I plugged it in at home on my level 2 charger, and it must really suck in the power because my level 2 charger made noises I've never heard it make before. So it must have been really pulling the power in.
Yeah, it did charge on a fast charger. I was at 150 kilowatt, and I saw like 131. So I was there for maybe like a half hour and got close to 100 miles.
That's pretty quick. All right, let's get back to what we were talking about as our trip down memory lane. And for those of you that have not been around listening to our podcast since the beginning, I should say the first podcast we aired right here in this same studio on September 3rd, 2008. In the studio with me that day were Brian Roberts from our staff, Yolanda Vasquez, who was a feature reporter for us that time, Brian Robinson, who's still writing our road test, Dave Durso, who was a writer. And we were in season 28 at that time, and we concentrated on fuel economy, which is almost the same thing we do today. But get this, folks, September 2008, gasoline nationwide average of $3.75 a gallon. It had been over $4 in the summer of 2008. Here we are 15 years later, and basically gas is cheaper today than it was then.
Yeah, it's kind of
really
crazy.
weird.
Before you include inflation, and that's what it was at the time,
Yes.
375. So now you're talking well over $4.
And probably in real terms today, that would be like $1.75, something like that. Then we fast forward to our 100th anniversary, which was Actually, 6 years later, July 25th, 2014, we had Bob Mixter, who was basically the fellow that created the idea for these podcasts here from MPT. And we also had our PR manager, Michelle Parker.
I was going to say, Bob at the time was doing post-production.
He was doing all of our post-production editing. What you saw on the screen was Bob's handiwork. Still here at MPT. It featured Brian Robinson again, Ben Davis, no relation to me, Greg Carlos, Patrick Lucas.
Patrick texted me today out of nowhere.
Patrick was actually, before Jessica Ray got here, Patrick was the first one that really got us into social media. And Patrick is now a lawyer.
He is a lawyer in Chicago. He has a real job now.
He has a real job. Anyway, you were saying Patrick texted
Yeah, I don't know. So I saw the rundown for this podcast, and I was thinking about, because we used to share an office. We came in around the same time. And I was thinking about it, and out of nowhere, he texted me today. Just a weird, like, universe kind of thing.
Is that funny?
Yeah, weird kind of connection there. So that was cool.
But Patrick's job was to make MotorWeek more visible on social media, which is now, of course, actually Jessica Ray's job. It's interesting. I think it's worth stopping here and thinking for a moment. That was 2014. Here we are in 2023. Social media then was still relatively new as far as its impact.
Yes.
How would you characterize it today?
It's like vital.
It's everything.
It is so vital. I don't know that we could be what we are without social media.
You couldn't.
We couldn't be doing this.
It's shaped the industry and auto show. It's had an effect on auto shows. At this time, we probably weren't concerned about whether or not we would be going to auto shows the next year.
We were just talking about in those days. I had a concept for years, even before this, about doing more and more stuff online, even doing complete episodes online. And at that point in 2008, we were just talking about doing our first drives online. Our as soon as we get back from a press preview, putting material up. Well, now, of course, everybody's doing that.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, too, because, around the time that we aired this first podcast was about the same time that our YouTube channel actually started.
Correct.
Our first videos were in that September 2008 time frame. I think one of our first videos on YouTube is the 2008 Honda Accord road test. So like this, it's kind of funny how like this podcast and kind of is part of our overall launch of social media and our digital presence.
To give you an idea, this is a tangent. That was my first semester of college, and I had to do...
You had to make me feel even older than I normally feel.
Well, I'm making myself feel old.
I'm not going to tell you what I was doing, John, in 2008.
So I was a student of Jonathan Slade, who works here at MPT. And I had to make basically what came down to like a documentary type thing, a small video that I had to. The assignment really was getting it out into the world. And YouTube was like it was a thing, obviously, but it wasn't like the main way to get content out. So instead of just like what now I would do is I would upload it to YouTube and assignment done. Like I actually went to the college's television station, the closed circuit television station, and like talked to the TV club and gave them a physical disc that they put in and put it out over the airwaves. And I'm just thinking 20 years later or close to 20 years later, like how easy it would have been to just do that assignment instead of like now I had to go talk to people I didn't know and I'm this like young freshman and didn't know how to do anything. But so that was, I'm going to end the tangent there, but it's just crazy.
Well, while we're sitting here, Kyle is a longtime television veteran too, and you've worked on a lot of other series besides MotorWeek. Have you seen social media shape them like it has us?
Not in the same respect, because it was, some of my time in traditional television there wasn't the idea that TV was dying the way that there is today. People are saying that TV is going to kind of go by the wayside and everything's going to be streaming.
Except that what you see on a screen is TV.
Yes,
folks.
Yes, but not changing the channel.
It just doesn't come to you on a TV.
And you can stream it.
It's still
it's
television,
not necessarily
but it's
linear.
Not television.
Traditional
television where check us out on channel 5, as opposed to just find our channel on YouTube or go through whatever widget or app you have on your Roku TV or Amazon Fire Stick or something like that to find what you need to find. But I mean, back then the internet and the social media presence, I started working in television 15, 16 years ago. So, we're going back to the 2010, I think was, or no, not 2010. 08 would have been probably my first job in television.
When we started doing the podcast.
Yeah. So, things have changed.
But
definitely.
TV today and MotorWeek today and automotive video today would not be even close to what it is if it wasn't for social media.
No, it definitely wouldn't.
There's so much information out there that you can get now. Not as good as ours, of course.
No.
But there's a lot of it. One thing before we get questions all the time, our 100th anniversary show in 2014, you could still tune us in, and listen to the bell.
Oh,
somebody would wonder where is the bell?
I don't know where the bell went, but I
where's
remember.
the bell? So explain what the bell was.
I don't really
She doesn't even know.
what the bell
okay.
was because
She's not a MotorWeek historian.
I heard
the speed round or whatever.
When we would get to the lightning round, everybody was supposed to basically limit their comments to a minute, and we'd have the bell, which I think Michelle Parker actually first, our former PR manager, had brought into the studio. So we have some way of politely but also fun to stop people. And of course, nobody ever paid any attention to the bell. They just kept talking, which is why we eventually retired.
It was definitely here 4 years ago.
Yeah,
That's when I started, and the bell was here when the first couple podcasts that I did. So it hasn't been
how
gone
many
for
times
that
it
long.
just sat at the middle of the table and nobody touched it.
Yeah. I don't remember being rung very often, but it was definitely here, and it got moved around.
All right, I guess I have to find the bell now.
It's somewhere.
Okay.
All right, let's fast forward to our 200th anniversary show, which was March 8th, 2019. That doesn't seem very long ago. So basically a year before the world went dark with COVID. Jim Bigwood, our audio engineer, at the time and long time, did more podcasts than anyone else. He made a little cameo appearance. We had Joe Ligo, who is our automotive historian and still does that from time to time. Brian Robinson again. Greg was, of course, here as well. And I have to tell you, the reason we brought this up is I made a number of predictions on that particular podcast, and I'm only doing about 1 for 3 as part of accuracy. I apparently worried at the time that the American appetite for electric vehicles would be spoiled from lack of infrastructure and poor resale value, and I believe that there would be more hybrids as they made more sense. Of course, now, in fairness, I didn't know about COVID. And I didn't anticipate that every government in the world would try to legislate everything in and out of existence.
I don't think that you're wrong completely on that, though.
Well, let's say I still think plug-in hybrids make more sense, or hybrids in general, but it doesn't seem like anybody's listening.
I mean, but I still think people are still turned off by lack of infrastructure. Yeah. I think resale value is a concern to them. I think those are still. I think there's some validity to that statement that you made.
What do you think today? All right. Do you still think that? Do you still think there's a chance that the public is that this current little fascination, which let's put it in perspective, we're talking about less than 10% of the market so far. And there's some stories out there today about how EV sales around the world, not in the U.S., collapsed in January because of a lot of the financial incentives went away. Mm-hmm. But do you think that the public could still get turned off by EVs and this could get to 10, 15, 20% of the market and stop?
I think potentially with use case. I think I feel like we hear it all the time. Lack of infrastructure is something that people worry about. And also the resale value aspect of it too. I think we're even seeing that on the used market, even though new EVs are harder to come by just due to production constraints. Mm-hmm. But I don't see people jumping or really even being like, oh, maybe I can get an EV for cheap used. I don't know. I feel like it's not there, the market quite yet.
There's plenty of them out there. The federal laws that put incentives for buying a used EV have very low income thresholds. So a lot of people that would like to buy a used EV won't qualify.
Right.
They make too much money.
Right.
There was one prediction on that show that I made that I did get completely wrong. I don't think anybody could argue. I did not think that SUVs would take over the market.
Well, this was a prediction that you, I think at the time were also being you had made this prediction 10 years prior as well. And you're like, I didn't think it would happen. But around this time, you have to keep in mind, like, this is truly when cars in the U.S. were dead.
Yeah, 65% of the market are SUVs, I think, something like that, maybe even more. It's got to be 65. The rest are pickup trucks. I think that it's worth asking the question, do you ever, what goes around comes around, different generations. Do you see sedans or hatchbacks ever becoming popular again? Do you think that will come back?
Mainstream popularity?
Yeah.
I don't know.
With the exception of a few
outside
people.
Of the Golf.
Well, with the exception of a few people like
hatchbacks
Honda
are extremely popular. They just call them subcompact SUVs.
Yeah, there you go.
5 doors.
They call them
Toyotas.
SUVs. They put all-wheel drive on them, or sometimes don't even do that.
I would have never guessed that Toyota would have come out with the GR Corolla, and it would have been as widely accepted as it has been. I mean,
there's still an appetite for cars, but it's now small.
Yeah, I mean,
it's specialized.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard for me to count them out completely because, like, they just keep coming out. And they keep coming out with cool ones, and people keep buying them just enough to get the next one out.
And it's not like if you were, driving on the highway that you don't see cars.
You do.
Like, people are still buying them. You look at any parking lot, and there are plenty of cars.
And it's the value. It's value now. If you want a modern vehicle with all the latest safety features and all of that, you can put yourself in a 4 or 5 door car for a whole lot less money than you can the same size SUV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's truly where the bargains are. And they have more space than ever before, whether that's like interior space and cargo room.
Yeah. And you take a look at the new Honda Accord. I mean, that's a very, very, and it's a hybrid.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The one thing I think I did get right, I said the biggest advancement in the previous 10 years had been in safety systems, but I don't think even I realized that in just another 5 years how far that needle would have moved further. I mean, we really, with all the semi-autonomous features on vehicles today, cars have never even approached being as safe as they are today.
That stuff probably gets glossed over now because there's such an emphasis on the electric drivetrain.
Yeah.
Like, people are forgetting that, rear cameras are ubiquitous. It's mandated. Basically, blind spot monitoring is working its way to almost standard.
Mm-hmm. It is.
360 cameras where you see directly down on top of the car are in most cars now.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like, we're like forgetting all this
automatic braking that really works.
Yes.
And again, like, back to, like, they don't just exist. They're in, like, the majority of cars that are being sold.
Yeah, the government regulations requiring certain safety features can't even begin to keep up with what the industry's doing. Rear cross traffic alert.
Yeah, that's a huge.
That's a
love
huge
that.
one.
I love that.
It's probably something we've debated during some of these podcasts. But how quickly they've become just part of a car now. Like, rear cross traffic alert to me must be like, you have to have that, just like the backup camera. Like, all of these things. Like, I've been living with them for so long. It's hard for me to imagine living without them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I have to be reminded every day I get in my old truck to go home that I don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's all like, I mean, sure, I would make it by, but it's so much safer now to drive a car.
And the strides too. I do want to mention that the crash testing that we are constantly seeing them having to increase the weights of some of these barriers because all of the cars are passing.
Yes.
So, and granted, cars are getting bigger, and but it's almost like, not that it's too easy, but they're meeting these standards, and we need to make it tougher, and they just keep making it tougher.
It's interesting. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, who looks at crash data before they make any changes in their particular standards, they're finding almost like not loopholes, but just they're fine-tuning their crash data so that they can continue to make vehicles safer. And they're going after areas they never went after before, like headlights.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's huge.
I just saw today, I caught the tail end of a story. They did midsize SUV small overlap, which is a relatively new one. That was basically the same thing they were trying to get manufacturers to pay attention to it. And now it's a rear seat passengers that they're looking at in that
rear
test.
Seat passenger.
Yeah. They said I think only 3 midsizes in that test got.
No one paid attention to it before, but they will now. And that kind of brings us to where we are today. So let me give you a couple of statistics. They're almost unbelievable. The average new car cost today, according to Kelley Blue Book, is $48,763.
Or that should be transaction.
That's transaction price, which in this day and age, that could mean that there's some pack on top of it, extra money or not, that the dealers have put on top of their popular models. The average monthly car payment is $777 a month.
That's average.
That's average.
What do you all do for work?
Exactly. 15% of car payments are more than $1,000 a month. And yet here we are, the average price of gas, $3.47 a gallon, diesel $4.34. Remember, in 2008 when we went on the air, it was $3.75 a gallon for gas. And the highest average price of gas in recent memory was last June at $5.
Well, that's ever.
That was ever.
That was an all-time high.
That's right, because we were only at $4 peak in 2008, so we're $5,000 in 2022 in June. $5 rather.
Yeah.
5,000, who knows? That could be coming down the pipe.
Not.
Do those numbers surprise you?
Are they surprising?
Yes.
I don't think they. When you look at
Do
them,
$100,000 pickup trucks surprise you?
when you look at them in a historical context, yes. But we've been. I mean, I think really post-pandemic, it's just out of control. So it's not. We've been experiencing this for like over 2 years now.
Yeah.
Some of these car prices. But in the context of, looking back from 2008, if you told yourself that you would be driving a $100,000 pickup in 2008, what would you have thought?
I would have thought that was just stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
Besides crazy, just stupid.
Right.
I wonder, though, if the high interest rates are going to start putting a damper on something. I mean, obviously, people won't be able to qualify for some of the loans that they probably could have gotten a year or 2 years ago. But I guess we don't know yet.
It's hard to tell because we also still have a supply issue.
Yeah.
So it's like traditionally, I guess, high interest rates would affect that.
This is probably with a longer average term than it was.
Oh, 7 and 8 years?
Yeah, I'm sure it was
84
closer to
months?
5.
Yeah.
That they offer? I mean,
I can't even imagine.
And then it makes you even sadder when you realize wages haven't kept up with.
yeah. It's just.
But that's for another
podcast. Okay, we are going to do one more on this look back. We've looked back, and we're going to look forward at the end of the show, but we do want to pause in this reminiscing and give what most folks actually tune into our podcast for, and that is a look at some of the most recent vehicles we've tested here on the show. We did the BMW i7. Now we're going to do another electric, and this is momentous because it is the Lexus brand first electric. It's the RZ, and Kyle is fresh back from having a chance to drive it and check it out. We've all seen it, but the question is it still a Lexus? Take it away.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, I was invited out to Encinitas, California, where we got the first drive experience of the 23 RZ 450e. Now, John, you might be really surprised to hear this from me. I really like it, and it's an all-electric vehicle.
I don't know if I've ever heard you say that.
I don't think anyone's ever
Lexus
heard me say
before.
it. Well, I do like Lexus, the LC500, fantastic vehicle. Love that car.
This is a little different.
It's much different than that, yes. But, I am kind of
I wouldn't say you're anti-EV.
I'm not anti-EV, but I definitely have the
skeptic.
Biggest skeptic probably in the crew. And I absolutely loved this car.
Really?
I did. You look at it, and it's Lexus. It fits right in with the family. The compact, NX, very similar. I remember they did kind of where they laid the cars on top of each other between the RZ, the NX, and one of the other models.
RX?
And the RX, I believe, and just to show the size differences of them. And they're all very similar in size. Wheelbase is different by a couple inches on two of the models. I know the RZ is just a little bit lower than the RX, I believe. But
it fits with the NX. Does it fit in the compact class with the NX?
Yeah, I believe it's all there in very similar size. We're within inches of each other.
Were you this crazy about the Toyota BZ4X? Because it's a very similar chassis. Same chassis.
Yeah, same platform. This has more power, definitely. I don't remember the numbers on the BZ4, but I remember it not being very quick at all. The RZ has 308 horsepower with two motors, front and rear system, or two motors, one in the front, one in the rear. All-wheel drive system. You can change them up so you only run on the rear to conserve your power, which is an 80 kilowatt motor, and the front I believe is 150. Nope.
Yeah, you said 80 kilowatt. That's right.
Yeah, front is 150 kilowatt. The rear motor is 80 kilowatts, and together producing that 308 horsepower, it actually does give you that nice jolt and kick if you put your foot down, which I really enjoyed.
I mean, didn't they say the 0 to 60 was like under 5 seconds or 5 seconds
Which
or something?
makes it a lot faster than the
no, 5 seconds flat is what they're
5
saying
seconds,
for the performance on that.
But cut to the chase.
Yes.
If you walk in, if you're interested in EVs,
yes,
but you're a Lexus owner, and you walk into the Lexus showroom and they've got an RZ, what do you see, and do you feel at home, or do you think it's an alien?
Nope, you definitely feel at home. You sit in the car and you immediately know you're in a Lexus. It has, like I say it in my video, which just went up on YouTube. Go check it out. They didn't go full spaceship, which is the only way I could really describe it when I was thinking about it. All these other manufacturers, their EVs are so far and away from their normal models that you see it on the street and you immediately go, oh yeah, that's so-and-so's EV, whether it be a BMW, whether it be Mercedes, Audi, they all look so much different than the rest of the models that they have in their lineup. And Lexus didn't go that route with it, which personally I really enjoy. You line it up with a bunch of other Lexus models, and other than it not having a grille and the aspects of that come with a full EV vehicle, it looks extremely similar, and it's just part of the lineup, and it's not its own little project on the side. And I really appreciated that, and I thought it looked great. It felt great. One of the really cool aspects is there's no sunshade for the dual panoramic sunroof up top, which even with it being a smaller car, you get more headroom because of that. And in one of the trims, I believe it was luxury, there's a button at the top that you hit and it will frost the glass.
Yeah, they used to
over the top.
We've seen that before, but they've never been very reliable. It was like electrochromic.
It's in the Toyota, under the umbrella.
Mercedes had a couple for a while. But here I gather it worked well and it was instantaneous.
Yep, it worked well. It was instantaneous, literally just like flicking on a light switch. But
I mean, it seems like they kind of hit their goal, Lexus, which was really to be, they needed to make an EV that people who don't want to buy an EV are going to buy.
Yeah. Well, they've said they're going to be all EV, in not too many years. Eventually. I mean, they're basically looking at what Cadillac claims. I've forgotten, but it's the same rough time frame as California's rules. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But definitely the story here with this is that they're going to be offering the steer-by-wire system.
All right, let's put this in context now.
Yes.
Steer-by-wire means that there's no physical
You have two
connection.
wires.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
And
it's just like a horse.
It's basically that gets a lot of people anxious.
It definitely gets people anxious that there's no mechanical connection between what you're holding onto and what's turning the wheels. And I mean, on paper, it does sound scary because you wonder how many things could go wrong. And a lot of the things that could go wrong are probably things that most people can't really comprehend what would go wrong anyways, because they're not the engineer that built this entire, not platform, but
System.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. But yeah, I got a chance to drive the steer-by-wire.
And this is going to be an option. It's not here right now.
It's not available yet, and it will be an option in the future. And one of the things that was really interesting about it is it's variable. The ratio of what you put in to the steering wheel your input of turn is not always going to be the same on how much the wheels turn. It depends on how fast you're going. Mm-hmm. So at a very slow speed, you turn the wheel over only 90 degrees or so, and you're doing a very quick U-turn, whereas if you're at 20 miles an hour, the same amount of input on the steering wheel is going to turn the car less, but it will feel like it feels as a driver that you're turning the steering wheel the proper amount. Well, now, how they went through...
But this is also with a steering wheel that looks more like an airplane yoke.
Yeah,
it's a flat
yoke.
top and bottom.
It's not a full steering wheel.
Hand over hand.
There is no hand over hand. I mean, you could, but it'd be very awkward, and it wouldn't allow it anyways. But it was. I mean, it's such a unique experience.
But did it take you any time to get used to it?
Yeah.
The first couple times you turn a little bit, you definitely. There's a whoops. You almost feel like you did something wrong because you'll put the input into the steering wheel as if it's a regular conventional steering wheel, and then the car just kind of will leap to whichever direction you're going at first. And you have to feel it out a little bit before. I mean, Lexus even had us go into a closed parking lot with a bunch of different cones, so you could actually
just in
case. They said, "Hey, how about we're going to put you in this parking lot?"
We trust the system. We just don't trust you.
We'd rather you
hit
me
like that's going to be something dealers are going to have to do.
I feel like they're going to have to as well.
Don't drive near any Lexus dealers.
Yes, yeah, because if you're just pulling out of the lot with never having any experience at this, even just 20 miles an hour and under, you're likely to hit a curb. To be honest.
To those folks out there who are Tesla fans that say that Tesla has already done a steering wheel that looks like a yoke on the Model S, that's true, but they did not go and put this variable system in.
Yes.
And so theirs is actually...
It's just a one-to-one.
It's just a one-to-one, and you still have to do hand-over-hand, which is why apparently they're taking it out.
Yeah, it doesn't work with the yoke.
You can't
one of those things they overlook.
This operates more like an airplane.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious, though, since I haven't driven it myself, at higher speeds, is there more weight when you turn the wheel so you don't want to turn it as fast?
I didn't get the opportunity to street drive it. I only got
just on the closed course.
On the closed course. So that'll be in the future when we hopefully get
fascinating, because this could be a incredible change for the industry.
I mean, I say it in my soundbite on the first drive, and I want to experience that either at our slalom course or on a real racetrack because it seems like it would be so much fun.
Well, the wheel, like I saw some footage of like the wheel moving, and it's so quick.
Yeah,
I've never seen a wheel turn that quick.
Yeah, if you turn your hand
like
all the way
the
over.
actual wheel.
Yeah, the actual wheel of the car.
Wheel of the car. Like it's wild.
Fascinating. Well, I think that's one vehicle when we get in here at the shop, we're all going to want to spend a lot of time in.
Definitely.
Let's go back and wrap up our reminiscing on this 300th podcast and make some look ahead, some predictions. Where do you think we're going to be in 5 years when we do the 400th podcast or whatever? What do you think is the market today a good harbinger of the future? Are EVs going to be where they, at 30, 40% of the market where the governments would like us to be? Do you think internal combustion vehicles are going to be basically passé? Fuel prices, what do you think? You folks are all a lot younger than I am. I'm going to put you on the spot.
My bold prediction will be, I think that EVs, it's a given that they're going to increase in market share. But my bold prediction will be that another propulsion system will break in. Well, not break in, but grow bigger. And I think it's going to be hydrogen.
Yeah.
I think hydrogen.
Fuel cells.
I think it's always been right on the outside. They're still mostly in California, if not still totally in California, the fueling stations. But it's hung around just long enough. And I always go back to the statement from Honda at their Clarity event of they took it as like there's no silver bullet to dealing with the whole climate issue. It's like, like EVs are one prong, but hydrogen could very well be another. Like we can't just say put all of our eggs in one basket. And I think there's just enough momentum behind hydrogen still to kind of push it. Maybe it'll take something, maybe another pandemic will push us into it. Maybe something will happen that will be like, we need to rapidly shift and put more money into hydrogen. Whatever it is, I think that it will grow over the next decade.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in a fuel cell. Hydrogen as a combustible fuel, BMW, for one, has been playing around with it since, I think, the 80s. And the commercial trucks are looking big time at using hydrogen both as fuel cells and as a combustible fuel.
Interesting.
I think, Greg, you make a great point, too, because we have to think, you know what else was only in California? There were only charging stations in California, EVs. When they first were becoming mainstream in the 90s, when you could only lease an EV if you lived in California, because that was the only place they had charging stations. So I think there's definitely some truth to that.
Yeah, just a few years ago, we were talking about when an EV would come out, we'd be like, okay, well, where is it sold? Is it sold in the rest of the country? Now it's just like selling all EV, you sell it everywhere in the country.
All right, let's talk practical, though, for those of us who are driving internal combustion engine vehicles and plan to do those. Do you think price of gas is going to be, crazy different than it is today? Now, of course, we don't know what world shocks could happen, but let's assume that we just go along merrily as we are now. Do you think we're looking at $10 a gallon gasoline, $6 a gallon? Do you think the market's going to be?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe
I was just there. It was over $5 in places. Yeah. Sure.
I mean, I don't think that in $10 a gallon, we would really have to be at over 50% EVs by that time, maybe even more than that.
So maybe there won't be that much demand for gasoline, and gasoline prices could be even cheaper.
Yeah, I guess it just depends. I mean, I can't see it being that expensive.
I should say 5 years.
Not 3 years. I know that in Europe, gas prices have always been higher than they are here,
it's mostly
and even
tax.
Canada. But it's mostly tax. But and their diesel is cheaper than our diesel, and so I don't know. I just can't see it, especially because EVs, unless everyone starts making $30,000 EVs within the next 10 years.
With the ability to charge them.
The ability to charge them quickly.
15 minutes.
I just can't see the demand for internal combustion engine and used ones is still going to be there. So I can't see gas.
I think you're going to have a lot of old SUVs and pickup trucks running around for a long time.
You're already seeing it.
Speaking of that, body styles, is it SUVs and pickup trucks from here on out? We've already pretty much mentioned we don't think cars are going to come back. Is there anything else in the wings, or like a resurgence of minivans, or can you think of anything?
I have it on very good authority that we will all be driving minivans in the next 10 years. Everyone will want a minivan, either that or a Hummer EV.
Well, that could be a safe bet. I will make a prediction. I actually think that just like the American public, when they found back in the 80s that they couldn't buy as big a passenger cars they were used to, they started buying SUVs, that if we see, because of fuel economy standards, the light truck and light car market moving away from internal combustion and more to electric, that the heavy-duty market, the one-ton market, will see new entrants there in the SUV and pickup truck, and they may become very, very popular with internal combustion engines. I just think it's very difficult, if not impossible, for governments to force people into vehicles that they don't want.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Cars and
especially in this
purchase.
country. Yeah. It's a very personal purchase.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything else they want to predict about the future before we wrap up?
Yeah, Kyle got a prediction?
No.
No
predictions.
Oh, come on, Kyle.
I do not have any predictions.
Where do you think the overall automotive business is headed in the next 5 years? What about automotive television and media? You think you just say social media is going to continue to reign, or is it going to get burned out because
I have something.
Unless somehow
I'll let him go.
Unless somehow the internet explodes, which isn't going to happen. I don't see.
Some days I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, some days I go full internet list, or contactless days, but we're not getting into that.
But Jessica is our internet guru.
Well,
where are we going?
Well, so really right now, short form media is huge, right? TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. I will actually say this: we are not allowed to use TikTok, so we're not using TikTok at this time. But we do have Instagram and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. But anyway. The problem with a lot of these that isn't necessarily an issue for us is that they can't be monetized, or they're very difficult to monetize. Much more difficult than a traditional YouTube,
than YouTube or Facebook.
Right. So right now we're seeing this huge boom. But I talk to people all the time and other automotive journalists who are like, "Yeah, it's great. It gets our name out there, but we're not making any money out of it, and it's just more time that we're taking. The cost effectiveness of it. So I don't know if I have like necessarily a prediction. Maybe I can definitely see that morphing in the future, hopefully in a way that people can monetize it. And I actually do hope that the short form gets a little bit longer because I do feel
medium
like
form. Let's
yeah,
find
medium form. I do because our attention spans.
You can't give much information.
No.
You can make an impression, but you can't really. You know, I mean, when it comes down to it, for us, if somebody like us, we still test cars, folks, and we want to get that information out.
Yeah, and some of that stuff in those videos is just so surface. It's I don't know. People like it, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see where that goes.
5 years, we'll look back on this 300th podcast, and we'll get a gauge on whether our crystal ball efforts were any better now than mine were, basically.
Yeah.
I hope they come up with something.
Yeah, one that doesn't burn my hand in the summer.
Probably won't even be gear shifters.
No.
Just use my mind.
Yes.
Tesla tried that too.
Yeah,
Tesla tried to get like an intuitive shifter.
You just brought up something. I want to ask your opinions before we go. Okay. BMW has made a prediction that within 5 to 10 years, screens will be obsolete.
Yes.
Cars will not have screens per se like we see now. It'll all be projected up on the windshield so you don't have to look away. I don't know what you'll be touching. I guess iDrive to control it.
So basically, it's just one gigantic heads-up display.
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic?
Personally, I turn off heads-up display on every car I get into. I can't stand it.
So the BMW, it's what they released at CES,
right?
Which was really incredible because it like projects all this stuff
everything
on the road for you, which I've seen in very like light situations. And Mercedes does that with their
arrows
level
and so
2. Well, they did it with their level 2 system, and they put this little green bar on the car in front of you's bumper when you're doing adaptive cruise control.
Okay.
So like. If you can do that, more sort of, I don't know. I think it's really cool. Do I think people will like take it in stride? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, all I want is just to know where the hazard lights are. I
True.
swear to God.
Yes.
And every time I have to search around for them. Just put them in one central place so I know where it is.
And the automatic on-off. I hate finding that button.
Auto stop start.
Auto stop start. I always turn that off in most vehicles. I turn that off, and it's so hard to find. I will say, as a precursor to the heads-up display thing with me turning them off, that's because I'm usually wearing sunglasses when I drive. My sunglasses are all polarized. So if you have polarized sunglasses, you can see it, or you can only kind of see it. And if you move your head a little bit, it'll like kind of show up, and it becomes more of a distraction for me personally. So that's one of the reasons I turn it off. So if they can find a way to make heads-up display work with polarized glasses, manufacturers, let's do it, because then I'd use it.
Maybe you could just buy special glasses that.
Oh my gosh!
Well, they'll be happy to
sell you.
Yeah.
You did touch on one thing. If we had to take a poll today about the most hated new feature on vehicles, it would probably be automatic stop-start.
Yep.
Well, he was just on a Subaru event, and
those
things, the auto stop start on those are at some of the roughest I think I've ever experienced.
They put it. It is forever on the screen now. On the infotainment, you don't have to search for it. Nope, it's right out. It's right there on the infotainment screen. So they listen to the buyer because they even said it in the presentation.
I swear it could wake a baby, that thing.
Thank you, Over the Edge reporter Greg Carlos, digital producer Jessica Ray, and our road test producer Kyle Scanlon. Thank you all for basically being so just getting into the whole theme of this 300th anniversary podcast. Thanks to all of you out there listening, and I want to thank our audio engineer, Austin Harris, for manning the control board today and making us sound better than we have any right to. Of course, our podcast producer, Jessica Ray, and our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and if you are wondering what time MotorWeek, the television series, can be seen on your local public television station, go to our website, motorweek.org. motorweek.org. Click on the tab about the show, then stations listing, enter your zip code, and voila, you will get the dates and times in your area. Or hop over to our cable partner, mavtv.com, for their schedule. You can also stream MotorWeek episodes for free, folks, on your mobile device or streaming box by downloading the PBS Video app. It's available at your device's app store or streaming channel library. All of the individual road test and feature segments are also available along with our retro road test on youtube.com/MotorWeek. In short, if you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Till next time, I'm John Davis. For all of us here, thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.